Let's create another page in the Vintage Adventure Journal. Hello and welcome to the Treasured Page. I'm Melanie and this is our quiet crafting space. Today I'm following along with the story of Nellie Bly, our explorer from the 1800s. I'm using some of the freebie digitals available for you on my coffee shop page. The link for that is below. And what I want to do is have a look at some of the pages that I've got here in this signature. So this is a signature that was sent to me at the beginning of spring. And inside you can see the things that have been added. So I have been sent an envelope there. So I would like to look at this page today, and also I want to decorate this part of the envelope here, and I thought that to do that I would use this background coffee stained sheet, which is part of the Nelly Bly kit, also available on the coffee shop. So I'm going to use this, which has just been printed out onto copy paper, and it's 80 GSM. And this is the kit that I'm working from. This is Nelly Bly, and I've got the little paper doll pieces that I've been cutting out there, and also some of the images and the tags, and I've made a little tag there with a reinforcement ring already ready to go, and I've backed it on there with another one of the lace backgrounds that are also available, which is part of this background kit you can get your hands on. If you are a monthly member, all of this is available to you for free. And taking this background sheet, I would like this decorative corner to come in and be on this page. So to do this, I'm going to line it on the other side. I'm going to flip the whole thing over. This is really just to avoid measuring. So I'm going to draw a line down there so I know where to cut. And then I can take the trimmer or take some scissors, and I'm just going to cut along my line where I've marked. Or probably would have been easier was just to tear with a tear ruler to give myself a rough edge. But I think it's just going to come and live in here anyway, so that's okay. And now I'm measuring the length, so I just want to flip that over, and I can see that I want to lose that bit there. That I need to cut away on my red line there. And I'm going to go round with a stronger glue to the edge. And here I'm adding some stronger 3-in-1 to the outside. I really want this stuck down nicely on the edges. I could run that through the sewing machine. So I'm just now going to wrestle this in, a little bit of a manoeuvre here, trying to get that in there. If I get the edges sorted out, it should push in there. We definitely checked it, and I'm all right with a bit of crinkling, so I'm just going to push that in. That's not the best way. All right, so that's how that's looking. Slightly wonky if I'm honest, and I've got a crinkle there, but I'm not fussed because I like the crinkle. I've been using ground espresso for this project, a nice dark grungy colour, so I'm just going to carry on with that round the edging here, and where I've got a little crinkle on this bit, I'm just going to emphasise it, so it's sort of a mistake, but we're going to run with that and just allow that to now look like a crack or a crease or something. It's a bit more grungy, and it's just a way to embrace some of the mistakes. And junk journaling and grunge style are both very much about crafting your way out of a problem, particularly if you've made an error or you've got some damaged piece of paper that you're working with to begin with. It's all about how you can make that better, how you can enhance it, or what can you do to it to change it, alter it, and ultimately bring forth something. You've adapted an old envelope into something really fun to work with. So for the top bit, I'm going to do the same, and this time I'm spinning the paper round so that it will come and be there. And how to do this is I'm going to put that in there. I know that this is the piece that I want to have, so I'm just going to draw my line on there. I'm using a heat reactive pen here, so I can put a heat source on it and the ink will disappear, so this red line will not be seen. There we go, a little bit of the red line there, but I will be removing that We're looking at corner decoration this month, and we are making corner bookmarks. On this occasion it's a corner tuck, so I am just going with what I'm seeing here, gluing down something on top of it to give it a decorative paper finish. And I'm just double gluing because these pockets do get a bit of wear and tear where you're pulling them in and out to put something inside it. So I just want to make sure that I've got some nice strong glue and that this is going to be stuck down without the need of any sewing. And I'm not bothered that that's not perfect because I'm going to be putting trim over it anyway. So it looked nice with some raggedy fabric there that picks out some of the blue tones. I'm not sure if that blue splatter is showing up, but I'm going to embellish with a little bit of silk that I've got here. This is sari silk, I believe, or it was a scarf. I get lots of little fabric pieces like this, and then I just use them for my crafts. Nice floaty fabrics that are thin, and then they don't cause too much bulk, but still allows that lovely fabric feel, that soft texture, and takes away the harsh line. And that's quite nice because everything ties in then, and I can just trim that off at the bottom when it's stuck down. So I'll just bend that, and maybe we'll just lose that bit so that we're not adding too much bulk. I mean, we're going to add bulk because I'm enjoying myself adding all the ideas, but at least I'm using a thin fabric to begin with. So now when I add journaling cards or fun pieces that I'm given, I have got areas for them to go. So that's how that's all looking, and I'm really pleased with that. That's good. So on to the next bit. But what I think I want to do is I want to open up this bit here. So I'm just going to run my finger along the envelope bit there and create a pocket there and a pocket there. And if I do it in 3 pattern papers, that will give it a hodgepodge patchwork feel. So when I get the papers, I will put those in. So while I think about what pattern paper, what fabric I would like to add to create my little tucks here for this envelope piece, which is just a folded envelope flap tucked in, I am going to have a look at this page because this scrap would like to be something else other than a rectangle. So now I'd like to work on this flip page here. I'm going to alter this scrap into something else, and I'm going to bring in some of my Vintage Adventure Nelly Bly embellishment pieces from the kit. Okay, for my flip page here, I'm looking at this side. I'm going to be using the scrap that I've been given. This is one that's been sent to me. I can see that it's got circles on it, so I've pulled out my circle punches and I'm going to punch out circles from this piece. I am also going to use the circle pieces that I've got. I'm working with the Nelly Bly kit from my coffee shop, so the link's below for all of this here, but you can use any decorative papers you like for this technique. So I just thought I'd craft along and talk about Nelly Bly and just show you a simple technique as I go. So I'm just punching these out. I'm going to use some larger ones, and then I'm going to have some smaller ones as well. The ink I'm going to be using is Distressed Oxide ink in Ground Espresso. That's the ink that I've been using for most of this journal, just to go around the edges. Nice smoky brown colour, really dark, and just gives a nice edge for the era that I'm working in, which is the 1800s. And the story of Nelly Bly takes place in America in 1885. So the story starts in Indiana, and then she moves to Pittsburgh, and then after that she moves to New York, and that is where she becomes a journalist later on in life. So thank you for all the comments and those of you who are enjoying the story so far. I'm telling it as best I can. There's not much I can read out without getting in trouble with copyright laws, so I am going to go with my own learning, and I shall tell you what I know. And also I can read out things that have been written for Wikipedia, places like that, but some of the details may not be 100% correct. So I encourage you to do your own research. If you've been inspired by this story, have a look and see if you would like to look up more about this incredible woman and her amazing journey. And what has struck me, what's been interesting about about this is the childhood of Nellie Bly. What led to this amazing woman being able to push herself, to be able to travel around the world and surpass any kind of record that would have been set out for a man. This feminist sort of drive that she has, I was really intrigued to know about her start in life and what led her to this. And also I have done a study before on Marianne North, so if you've seen the Marianne North journal, the making of that came about from a Defemerember project. So if you have a look in my playlist, you'll find the Marianne North journal. You can follow along with all the stories there. And interestingly, in history, Marianne North, the artist and oil painter who travels the world painting botanical images all over different countries to bring back for her gallery that she has in Kew Gardens in London. She very sadly passes away in 1890. Well, it's this same year, in 1890, that Nellie Bly completes her mission of travelling around the world in the 80 days, but trying to do better than Jules Verne, Phileas Fogg, 80 Days Around the World. She says that she can do it in a shorter amount of time. She's researched it and she feels really confident that she can do it. So she sets this challenge. She goes to her editor at the newspaper, the New York World, and she says that she can do this. And they said, well, no, I think we'll send a man. And that just fuels this sort of anger within her, this driving force to prove herself. And I think that a lot of women had to prove themselves, and we perhaps still do, even in this day and age, but particularly then, where it was unheard of to have a female reporter being able to do some of these things, not because it was she couldn't do it, but more that the system perhaps didn't allow it. And that is because a newsroom would have not been seen as a place for a woman, particularly a genteel woman or a pretty woman, you know, a woman that wanted to dress up and just I suppose any woman. So I'm not going down the route of doing men down, absolutely not, because I think in that time frame it would have been a bit strange to have a woman in the workplace where it was a newsroom, because let's think about it, in 1890 you would have had tobacco chewing, you would have had spittoons, you would have had some real gritty goings on in the news, and it would have been quite difficult. There would have been stories of brutality and all sorts of things, and whilst as women we know we have the capacity to handle all of those things, and particularly as women as seen to be nurses in certain professions, we are no strangers to gruesome detail. However, in that era, it would have been in England also, that having a woman in a newsroom was just a bit of a taboo and it hadn't been done. So Nellie, of course, was trying to challenge that. And there would have been men there that wouldn't have wanted their daughters there or their wives there, and that is because of the nature of the conversation that would have gone on and just that general mentality of the working man's world. Now, for those of you who have asked about if there's a book that I'm going to be reading from, no, I'm not. I can't because of copyright issues, but I am going to give you the story in my own words, and I can pull from facts that we know from historical data, so I shall be doing that. However, if you would like to get your hands on a copy of the book that I'm reading, you might enjoy looking at the earlier life of Nellie Bly, and I'm reading this. I've only got a little way through at the moment, but this is Mad Woman by Louisa Traeger, and she is a British author who has written, and she's also a bit of a historian, so she's done her research thoroughly, and she's got all the detail in here, and it's lovely to read. I'm saying it's lovely, it's quite gritty, quite gruesome. Nellie has a very difficult upbringing, lots of sadness in there, so if you would find that that would be a bit triggering for you, perhaps this is not the most gentle of reads. However, it is historically correct to all the detail, and it is of interest if you would like to know how a woman has been compelled to accomplish such things in her life, what has fueled her on. And I shall give you a rough outline here without spoiling the story, because the author here, Louisa, has put a fictional base around the facts that we know, and she's filled in the gaps, and she's done it in such a sensitive way, and it is really lovely. I like the way that she's written it so far. It's quite compelling, and I'm very much drawn in. So what I know is that when I was reading my facts in the last video, I said that Nellie's father passed away when he was 6, but actually looking at it even more, and certainly reading some of that book, she was a lot older. She was actually not 6 at all, and that was incorrect from the data that I found. So it is a long time ago, but she was nearly 11 or 12 when her father passed away. And being of that age, and I can relate because of my daughter's a similar age, you're already forming who you are as a person, and Nellie was no exception. She knew what she liked and what she didn't like. So when Nellie was born, she was the 13th daughter of her father. He had another marriage beforehand. When he married Nellie's mother, there were 5 of them in total, but Nellie was number 3 out of their little family there. So she had 2 older brothers, then Nellie, then she had another sister, and then a younger brother as well. So growing up, she felt responsible for the younger 2, her little sister Kate and Henry, who was the youngest. So she was about 11 or 12 when her father passed away, and it was very, very sudden, and he didn't leave a will. So this was huge. So Nellie's father had really worked his way up in life. He ended up earning money but saving it and then putting it into property, and he also eventually ended up being a judge for the courts. And so this is where the story begins, with this man as a judge. He's already had a marriage, he's had children with his previous wife. That ended tragically with his wife passing away. These were the times, and things happened. So we know that she lives in Indiana. We know that she lives in this lovely mill house. They have quite a lot of friends because her father's a landowner, and she is born into money. So she's comes from a privileged background at the moment, so everything's looking okay for her. She has an educated mother and father. They are model citizens, and everything is okay. So the story starts when Nellie is first christened, and the most notable thing about her christening was, uncharacteristically, her mother crowned Nellie with a bright pink crown, and it was a bit unheard of. It was the talk of the town, something a bit different, and of course this name of Pink stuck. So they've called their daughter Elizabeth, but she has this nickname of Pink, and it sticks. And then also her father calls her Pinky, and that's just her affectionate name that she has with her father. She's adored because they've had 2 boys beforehand, and the mother dotes upon this little girl and dresses her in pink from head to toe in these pink dresses. Well, that's fine until Nellie starts to not like it as she gets older. And she also has this real rebellious side where her brothers start teasing her and saying that she can't run fast enough in her dress, which of course you couldn't in those days. And so these activities that she gets involved in, such as trying to bareback ride a horse and try and stand up on its back to prove herself to her brothers, So she's trying to ride bareback in this pink dress, and it's really heavy and all the fabric, and over there they're laughing at her, and as she takes a tumble and falls off, and then she gets mud on this dress, and then there's this cause for concern that the mother's going to be really upset with them because she has got filthy dirty. And you see in the story that her mother is immaculate, the way she keeps her house. Everything is very house proud. They have high standards with the way that they keep a house, and everything is neat and tidy, has its place. The children are clean, they're well dressed, and they are well looked after. The next thing we see is that her father observes that Nellie is very good at talking to people. She has a way about her that people seem to open up and tell her their troubles. They tell her, you know, she's a good listener. So he uses that in his cases to be able to send Nellie round to some of these houses to go and talk to neighbours. They all know one another, the community's small, and she can ask certain questions and she will get answers that maybe an adult wouldn't have got. So she can then go back and she reports these things to her dad. You're not really knowing what she's saying, but she can help him with his work and his cases, and he will allow her to come and sit in his study, and he is very keen for her to learn to be quiet and to be respectful when in his study, particularly when he's working. And if she's there, she's told that she needs to start learning to read, and she finds that incredibly boring and would much rather be doing something that's energetic and exciting and exhilarating, like riding the horses, playing with her brothers, and just generally doing what boys do. And she hates being told that she can't do it, and she hates being dressed up like a puppet, and she doesn't want to wear these pink dresses that her mother insists that she wears to keep up appearances. And so the father takes her under his wing and says, well, if you'd like to make your way in this world and stand up against some of the men, then you are going to need to learn to read. And so he sets about trying to teach her to read. She does very well. She suddenly starts seeing when the words are spelt out to her, she then starts seeing the images. She can relate to the words, and then the images and stories start coming for her, and she likes that. And that's the start of her discovering that writing and reading are really interesting pastimes for her. And then when she has a birthday, her father gifts her a journal and a pen, a very special pen, and a pale blue notebook. So it's a very special bound notebook with a pale blue cover, and she has this special pen that goes with it, and those become her pride possessions. She then goes off and writes personal notes, personal stories. All of her ideas and thoughts go into these special pages. And we understand from this that Nellie had a very fond relationship to her father, and he was the one that had shown her how hard work and learning would be the key to her success, and sort of to get her out of a life that she didn't particularly want to have. She wanted to be able to run free from a very early age, so it was important for Nellie to be able to learn to read, and so that she could have this goal to better herself in the future. And so that is her blueprint. That's where that came from. And then very tragically, Nellie's father has a stroke, and the doctor is called, and they can see that he's still breathing and he's lying on his bed, but he's unresponsive. And this is really tragic for them, because they didn't know what it was. They didn't have the medical know-how to understand how to help. And this very key prominent man who had he had land, he had staff working for him, he was a pinnacle figure within the community, being a court judge. So to lose somebody like this was huge. It was big news. Everybody knew about it. So Nellie's mother couldn't handle the condition of her husband. She went to pieces, and it was Nellie and her older brothers that looked after the father in the final weeks, and it was Nellie that was at his side, tending to his every need. So it's a very sad, tragic story of how she lost her father and how she was there at the end. And also then what happened next was they realised that the father, Michael Cochrane, had not left a will, and that meant that their house, their business, their lifestyle, everything just went overnight and they were left destitute. They very quickly realised who their friends were. They had some that sticked by them and others that just disappeared, and it was a very difficult time. And then we see the family move to Pittsburgh, where they were looking for work. And what happened is the boys were able to get work, and then Nellie, who also needed to work to help pay the bills, she was only able to get cleaning work and very minimal paid jobs that she hated, absolutely hated, and was trying to do her best to support her younger brothers and sisters and her mother. So they were all having to work and also manage the grief that they were going through. So a bit later on at this time is when her mother meets another man. He's called Jack. He's very charming, and he sweeps her off her feet and takes her into his confidence, and they build up this friendship, and then very quickly they get married. And after some time, the family settle down, and it seems that their mother is much more relaxed and is feeling a lot better. She has found love again, and the family seem to be in a good place. It doesn't last for long, sadly, because it would seem that after a time, the new stepfather realises that a lot of his money is going to support 5 children that are not his own. And also he's a labourer, and when he comes home from work on some days that he doesn't have to work, he was surrounded by a very noisy house and he couldn't get any peace and quiet for himself. And so he takes that out on them all, and he ends up having an argument, shouting at them, and he takes himself off down to a bar where he spends most of the afternoon and most of their money drinking alcohol, and then he will come home and be quite aggressive. And unfortunately that's where the story takes a little bit of a nasty turn, because he does become very abusive with this pattern that he's fallen into of drinking and then coming home and taking it out on everybody when he gets back. So this becomes a very frightening part of Nellie's life, one in which she'll never forget. It shows that Nellie's mother has made a terrible mistake in marrying this man, and he has become very aggressive and violent towards Nellie's mum and also to some of the older boys, just shouting, but mainly everything is aimed at Nellie's mother. And from this point, Nellie then decides that that is not going to be the life that she would see for herself. She doesn't want to have that. She is very scared that that could be her fate if she were to end up with a man, particularly an abusive, aggressive man, and it really just puts her off men in general. So that is the story behind how Nellie had this sort of worry of men and where it came from. It certainly wasn't her father. He was a loving man and a very studious man that wanted the best for his daughter, well, all his children, and he could have provided for them had he not been struck down. So unfortunately this story does have a bit of a dark side, but all good stories do, because it's where somebody takes their strength from, is their background, their history, something that really wounded them in the past can be turned into their strength and a superpower in the future. So once they've eventually got away from this abusive stepfather, they can then rebuild their lives. And Nellie is a lot older at this point. She's 16 and over, but she does go off to try and support the family. And the only way to do this is to try and get herself a job. But it's proving very difficult. And what she does find is that she is able to answer an advert in the local newspaper, which we heard last time, where the article had been written as "What are women good for?" and Nellie was able to write from a completely different perspective, that women were not just there for making house and having babies and all of these things. Some women simply couldn't do that. They had to work to provide for their families, particularly where a man wasn't present. Nellie was quite disgusted with the way that the papers were written, just assuming that everybody was married and everybody was happy. And of course she'd seen a very different side to all of that. And she was able to write in quite a forceful way and passionately explain that actually not all women were destined to be housewives and to make the house a pleasant place. As much as that has been her training from her mother, that just was not the life that Nellie was going to be having. She had decided, and there would be nothing that could sway her now that she'd made up her mind. So I'm just doing some collage here using a Tim Holtz collage roll or collage paper, and this is called Travel or Voyage. I thought it was perfect to come and be part of this story today. So Nellie was really able to write what it was like for her mother, being a widow and also then being a victim of an abusive partner. She was able to document that and write down exactly what it all was, and they loved it. They absolutely lapped up her stories, and she was able to get a job. The only thing is that when she was doing this work, she was not paid anywhere near what the men were, and so that continued to be an issue. So now I'm just gently overlaying, bringing my circles this way, just building up a little pattern here based on the scraps that I've been given, and using some of my own little maps and things that I can pop into places, and I think it's quite effective. I was just given this idea from the scrap that I was sent, and it's really nice to allow your mind to play and wander and link it into something that I'm looking into at the time. A little bit of story journaling and processing what I've learned about Nellie and her family throughout the history, understanding the different culture at the time and what it was like to be a woman in that era and how that would have affected things, and also to have been this journalist and actually not being paid as much as her male counterpart, and how do we feel about that when we still see some of this today and we're still trying to stamp it out so many decades on from this era in 1880. I'm liking that now. I'm going to just line this paper. I'm going to line this inside flip here. Now, the book I'm reading is very much about the stunt woman that Nellie Bly became, and her first stunt was to get herself put into this lunatic asylum. And any stories about that may affect anybody here, I do apologise. I'm just reporting on what I have discovered based on that time frame. So any derogatory terms used here to describe somebody with mental health problems is not meant to cause offence at all. I'm acutely aware of that, and I hope that some of these stories actually help raise awareness, because we are still working towards a much better understanding of mental well-being for women and men in our world. So I'm going to add in my lace background here. It's got some blue tones in it. There we go. There we go. Quite like So it's in Pittsburgh that Nellie gets this job with the newspaper. She's not earning as much as the men, but it's giving her something to help her mum and her family to survive. So she's got a job where she can have a voice, and she uses that voice to help women and try and change the perspective of how women are seen where they have to get divorced or where they have to live and work without a husband. So what happened is, after this horrendous marriage has come to an end, divorce really wasn't something that was looked upon as something that you did. And in fact, it was not really something that had been done before where they were. I think there were only 5 cases of divorce that had been brought to the court, and only one by the wife. So it was hugely documented and quite the scandal. So I think that really affected everything. And when this was going on, Nellie had to testify in a court in front of a judge, and the courtroom would have been where her father had worked, and she had to say very candidly what her experience was of the stepfather and how the relationship had been negative for the mother and what that had done to the family and how they all felt frightened. And then it was a unanimous vote in the end, after Nellie had just followed what she had been taught by her father, which was just take the emotion out of it and just give the facts. And so what she did was she was able to testify against this dreadful stepfather who had really had scared them all and abused the mother quite badly, and they were able to escape from this. It was unanimously agreed that the divorce should go ahead, completely unheard of in these times. But these were extenuating circumstances, and he had been found guilty. Tattered and torn, the family pick themselves up, and this is where Nellie gets the job to support them all by helping at the newspaper, and she gets her own column, and she is able to write under a pen name of Nellie Bly. This gives her a character for which to be free when she writes. Now, she wasn't as educated as she would like, but she got the facts and she told the truth, and that is something that the editor could work with. So she went and got the facts, and he would edit it and make the whole thing work. And that worked really well for some time, until she just wasn't being given some very interesting work. She was asking for it, but she ended up being relegated to just the women's pages and just documenting stuff about fashion and cookery, just giving reviews on things like theatre, and also gardening and planting and all things that were safe. And Nellie didn't want to be safe. She wanted to report on hard-hitting issues that were affecting women, and particularly affecting her own world, her own life. So yeah, a very interesting woman, and we will carry on with this story as I am reading and learning a bit more about it. But she's inspirational because she comes from such a harsh background. She was born into privilege, and that was very quickly taken away from her at a young age. Her mother fell apart. She'd been abused. She had a history of mental illness in the family, with her mum being so incapacitated, and she had to step up at a very, very young age, learning to work for herself and being very clever with how she was able to carve a way for herself amongst a very male-dominated industry that was the newsrooms of the reporting newspapers. So I hope you're enjoying the story so far of our interesting explorer. She was the 13th daughter of Michael Cochrane, and she lost her father at a very early age. He was a lawyer and he was an important, prominent member in society, and he was able to give her the education that she so needed to be able to take her thoughts forward to become this amazing journalist in the future. They started out in Indiana, and that is where she discovered her love of books and writing, and also where she decided that she was never going to marry, that she was going to go on her travels and she was going to explore foreign lands, and she was going to do it better and faster than any man, and she was out to prove something. And so this little story, which is set in the 1800s, is taking us all around the world. We'll be going to Mexico, we've been to New York, and we're going to just have a little look at how she gets on over the next coming videos, which I will be putting together with more stories from this vintage adventure journal, which I will be popping in and out of throughout the month. And then when I receive my next swap, I will have more scraps to add to this journal, and I can start building up the rest and continue with the story, or see where the next swap takes me. But certainly, if you're interested in learning more about Nellie Bly, if that has inspired you to find out about her expedition around the world, which she completed in 72 days, then we are going to be looking at that more as I get into it. And also, if you'd like to find out how she got on and what she did to get into an asylum and the story all surrounding that, and it's just an incredible story about this wonderful woman, you can have a look for this book, Louisa Traeger, and it came out in 2022. So it's a really good book, and I have watched an interview with the author. She's very, very astute, very thorough with her meticulous detail. So if you are interested in the early years of Nellie Bly, definitely that's a really good read. And I hope that I've sort of given you a little bit of an insight into what to expect. So don't go into it if that is something that may affect you, because it is quite hard hitting. But it is a very gritty past that we all have from the 1800s, and it is part of why, when we've got women such as this that were able to highlight the ways in which we needed reform, it is why we have come so far, and we still striving to go further with these key topics that this woman has started on her adventure. So definitely a pioneering woman from our past, along with many others, and it is nice to remember her and remember others that are our unsung heroes that may have, where a man may have taken credit for her work, or she may not have been paid as much as her counterpart. I think that is part of the wonderful work that she did, and also where we have managed to recognise that, and we're hoping to take things forward now, and we're seeing a real shift in how mental well-being is being seen around the world, and why journaling is obviously one of the go-to methods to help you relax and help you unwind and bring forth that feeling of completeness and get in touch with the creative side. So I am going to leave it there. And if you've made it to this part of the video, thank you very much for watching. I've just uploaded this printable for download if you would like, and you can head on over and find that at my coffee shop. The link for that is in my link tree below. You can have a look at my coffee shop page and have a look at the gallery, and you will be able to find this in the shop. And this is a two-part giveaway because there is a lace background as well that comes with it, so you can orientate it all which ways, and you would be able to have this as a backing for tags and things like that. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for all your support here at the Treasured Page. I hope you've been able to find some inspiration here today and perhaps even learnt something from history. And if you'd like to follow along with this series, do have a look at my playlist. You'll find all of the videos under Send a Signature 2024. If you don't want to miss out on the videos coming up, do click on the bell icon and you'll be alerted when videos are uploaded. I may skip around with some other tutorial videos in between, but I will be covering this project and 2 others at the same time, which I also have on the go just to spice things up. If you're interested in this project in particular, do have a look in the playlist. You'll be able to see all of the videos in sequence through the Send a Signature. And of course, do please like and subscribe if you'd like to follow along with more adventures from the treasured page. But above everything else, guys, just slow down and make crafting time for you. Bye bye now.